All righty. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us here today. Excited to share this content with you. Before we hop in, today we're going to talk about how you can instantly increase your closing ratio using Best Roofing as a case study here today. But before we hop in, I like to always get started with a tech check and want to make sure you can hear me okay. Can you see my screen? If you can, please just say so in the chat and we'll get started here. Alrighty, great. So let's see here. All right, so let's hop in. So today we're talking about how you can instantly increase your closing ratio. Now the problem, um, a lot of companies that I see coming to Followup CRM or using another system, they're constantly telling me that they are bidding a lot of work, but not winning a lot of work. Average closing ratio or win rate, if you like to call it that way, in this industry is sub 10%, which means there's a lot of activity going on, but not a lot of contracts being won. And when you are wasting a lot of time doing that, it can feel like you're pushing the ball uphill. Imagine if you're bidding, 20 jobs a month, 30 jobs a month, and you have to do measurements, you have to do estimates, you have to build the relationships, and you're doing that many, and you're only winning, 10%, so maybe 2 jobs a month. Um, Imagine hitting those revenue objectives that you want to hit with your company and growing your revenues. You're going to have to double that, triple that to be able to hit those revenue objectives of growth. And it's going to feel like you're pushing the ball uphill. And the reason why a lot of people seem to be bidding a lot and estimating a lot are for a couple of reasons. And before we kind of dive in on how to solve those challenges, what we want to do is diagnose the problem. And one of those reasons is we have a bid everything and see what sticks mentality. I don't know if you've ever heard about this test when cooking pasta. If you throw it against the wall and it sticks, that means it's ready, right? And so I know a lot of contractors that what they do is they, maybe they go on Dodge reports or something like that, or bidding service, or they're just getting requests coming into the business and they're like, yeah, bid it, let's give it a shot, and what happens is your employees, your project managers or salespeople or estimators, they're spending hours estimating things to see if you'll get it, right? Kind of a bid and beg mentality, crossing your fingers, that either your prices are low enough or that you might have the relationship over another guy. And so we're just going to see if we get it. And what happens is, like I said, we waste a lot of time bidding jobs that you never get. I had a client tell us that they're actually bidding 50% less work, but winning the same amount of work that they've always won due to the reports and analytics that Followup CRM provides, which the owner was ranting and raving because their whole team is so much happier because they're less stressed and still hitting their goals. And there's a couple of reasons why we were able to bid less and win more because of the strategies that we're going to talk about here today. Another reason why you might have low closing ratios is your people might be wearing too many hats. This is a very common problem. So how does wearing too many hats contribute to your closing ratio? In a couple of different ways. Number one, your salespeople might be managing the project, or your project managers might be selling the job, and also they might be doing the estimate. In a lot of the more sophisticated companies that we encounter here with Followup CRM, what they do is actually divide those three roles into three individual hires. So you'll have one person that's selling the job, you'll have one person that's estimating the job, and then you'll have another person that's managing the project once the project is won. And the reason why that's important is because if all of those functions are rolled up into one person, then as soon as you close the job and now you're managing the job, guess what you're not doing? You're not following up with your bids that are out there. You're not pursuing new bids and pursuing new relationships and estimates, and you're dropping the ball on the front side of the business. And so that contributes to your closing ratio, because if you're not following up with the bids that are 3 to 6 months from now, your competitors are, and building those relationships. And especially when it comes to project management, you're trying to make sure things are on time, everyone's showing up the way they're supposed to, the materials are delivered. There's so much that needs to be done on the project side that really is a distraction from the sales and estimating part of the business. Now, some of you might say, we're smaller. Everybody does everything because we're just a smaller company. We don't have the ability to do that. And I would push back a little bit and say, as soon as you have the ability to hire a second salesperson, you have the ability to start specializing. Imagine this. Imagine rather than hiring a second salesperson, imagine you hired a support person to that salesperson. For example, you hired a full-time estimator to help with the estimates that the salesperson needs, depending, of course, on how complex your estimates are. And a lot of our clients, they use a software called the Estimating Edge. And some of these estimates that are needed, they can take 10 plus hours to put together. Now, if you're handing off that estimate to a 100% estimator, that is 10 more hours the salesperson gets back to pursue opportunities, to follow up, build relationships. So that actually gets the throughput of your leads to your salesperson and your estimator higher, so they can handle more because they are specialized, right? We're going to get more into that here in just a minute. The next reason, as you can tell from those three diagnoses, things start falling through the cracks, right? So if one person's doing everything, your leads are going to fall through the cracks, your bids are going to fall through the cracks. Clients are going to say, hey, you haven't followed up with me. I hear that all the time. And of course, owners and VPs, sales managers are like, hey, what's going on, guys? Why is this client reaching out saying they haven't heard from you in months? And then the excuse is, well, I'm doing this, this, and that. And the result is that you get low margin jobs, right? You start cutting prices because we need work. We need, even if it's, let's get it, even though we're making 5%, it's better than nothing. And so you start putting out fires by creating new fires, right? Because once you have a low margin job that you're winning, then you have little margin of error, or you have to make sure that the project doesn't go over budget, all these different elements when you start to cut your margins. And, when that happens, you don't know what's on the radar coming down the pipeline, right? So if you don't know if the next job is going to be high margin or low margin. It's really difficult to manage a business like this. And the most important lesson to take away is that it all starts with the sale. And it all starts with the contract that you're winning and the client that you're serving. And so what we want to do is to make sure we know what's on the radar. So my promise for us today, for the rest of our time, is to be able to bring in a tsunami of high margin work into the business, so that you can have the high margin jobs that you actually need to make money doing. There's no purpose in doing that, free work or skinny work for anybody. I was meeting with a client today, Best Roofing, and they were, the reason why we have a tsunami of high margin work is because of what Greg Wallach told me just this morning, saying, we have a tsunami of high margin work coming towards us. We might grow 40% this year. And I said, Greg, how did you do that? And so what we did is we opened up the system, and he said, take a look at this. So this is just a screenshot from this morning. He said, look at our pipeline. We have $16 million in contracts to be signed in the next 30 to 60 days. And I said, Greg, how did you do that? He said, well, let's look at our pipeline. Let's look at who we're bidding to. Let's look at all these different elements that I'm going to review with you here today to increase your closing ratio and to increase the margin on your bids. So that's what we're about to dive in here. This is live data. The proof's in the pudding, and all I'm doing today is sharing with you what successful clients are already doing. That's the exciting part. So before we hop into that, just imagine this. Number one, you have a steady, predictable stream of work coming into the business. You don't have to worry where your next job is coming from. You're not wasting time estimating jobs that you won't win, and neither is your team. You're winning back time. Number three, you're winning jobs with 30 to 60% margin. I see, 60% margin. That's great. And of course it does depend if you're doing service jobs, new construction, or private negotiated work. But I see tons of clients winning 30 to 60% margin jobs. Number four, you're winning 50% of the jobs that you're bidding. And what that tells you, 1 out of 2 bids that you're winning, you're not wasting your time. You're working with close clients. Number five, you have highly profitable backlog. I believe the backlog of what I just showed you right here, the backlog of contracts to be signed, their average gross margin, I believe, was about 45%. Imagine if you made 45% on that $16 million. That's amazing. And number six, this is where real freedom comes in. You can say no to work. You can say no to those low margin jobs. And, Greg at Best Roofing, he tells me all the time, I get to walk away from jobs all the time. Why? Because he has that high margin profitable work in his backlog, and they're getting it done. So how did they do that? Let's dive in. I'm going to show you here 6 things you can do now to increase your closing ratio and your margins on your backlog. And to get us started, we got to go back to the basics. Number 1, you got to define your ideal client. Now, a lot of people might think this is really basic stuff, but what I have found is that a lot of the dysfunctions that you might currently have in your business down the road starts right here, because you don't have an ideal client that you are pursuing, that you want to work with, and that you are saying, that is the kind of people that we want to work with. So for example, at Best Roofing, they have an ideal client. And this is what it looks like. This is a report straight from Followup. This is the bids that they've bid to over the past, just this year. And you can see 60% of the bids that they send out are all condo and multifamily jobs. Almost 2,000 bids, almost all of them, right? So 60%. 13% is warehouse, and then 12% is retail. So the rest of them, which is all of these that you can see here, are very little. What does that mean? That Best Roofing's ideal client is a condo multifamily commercial roof. And the reason why that's so important is, guess what? They're not wasting their time with all these other little ones. That the reason why they might have bid these other jobs is maybe because it was like a special deal, or they were personally reached out to, right? So if they're bidding this kind of work, I've gone through this exercise with other clients, and when we open up this graph, there might be an even split of all of these client profiles in this graph, and they might imagine if this was 10%, 10%, 10%, 10%, 10%, all the way down the list. You don't know who your best kind of clients are. And so in the beginning, I know everyone's not as big as Best Roofing. In the beginning, what you want to do is see, what are the margins look like for the jobs that we want to win. So once Best Roofing identified that the condos and multifamilies are really a specialty of theirs and they're high margin, they make sure that they are on top of all of those kind of jobs. So when you really define that, the world starts to open up to you. And I'll explain more what I mean by that in a minute. Now, some of you out there, you're trying to decide if you want to do residential or commercial, right? Not Best Roofing here. Best Roofing has already decided we're only doing commercial. And then even drilling in further from there, they said, we want to specialize in condo and multifamily, not the rest of these. So they're even taking a deeper dive into the niche. And the proof is in the pudding. They're going to hit 70 million in revenue this year. Not only 70 million, but but those jobs that make up that 70 million, they're at 30 to 60% margin on those jobs. So if you'd like to be in that position, that's what it takes to get there. And the pushback that you feel is like, oh, but what about those other jobs? What about that big job that's, not my ideal client? And so what happens is you end up bidding it, you end up winning it, and then it's a headache that you never wanted to enter. That comes with experience. So I just wanted to show you that proof is in the pudding. It all starts with the ideal client profile. Once you have that identified and you're disciplined in bidding this kind of work, that brings us to a next point. Narrow your focus. Narrow your focus, specialize, and be the high-end provider for that space. That's exactly what Best Roofing did, right? So the reason why they're allowed to and they can raise their margins, 20% versus the next highest bidder is because they are the high-end provider and they're specialized. If I come to you and I say, I have a condo, a condo building that I own, we're looking at, XYZ roofer over here who kind of does everything, they gave me a low price, thinking about going with them. And then you come in with a price that's, 40% higher, they're going to look at that and say, whoa, what's going on with this? That is a selling opportunity. That's an opportunity for you to go, we're going to get it done for you right the first time with no leaks on time. So you don't have to worry about your roof for the next 20, 25 years. How does that sound? These other guys, XYZ roofers over here, they don't specialize in commercial high-end roofing. So what you got is some guy who's going on residential roofs, putting on shingles. They don't really know the details and the intricacies of a high-rise commercial roof. So what are you going to get is you're going to go with these guys, these lower-priced guys, and in 6 months you'll have a leak. You'll call them back. They'll fix the leak. They'll charge you for the service, and so on and so forth, until you're so frustrated that you're going to end up giving me a call again to patch up and clean up the work that they've done. I've heard that story time and time again. When you sell that way, you win a lot of trust. And then at the end of the day, guys, when it comes to a commercial roof, at least, there's no difference between a $200,000 deal and a $225,000 deal. There's very little difference when it comes to a high ticket item like that, right? Or if you're on the residential side, you definitely want to go high end. And what's the difference between a $20,000 roof and a $25,000 roof? If you never have to worry about that again, right? So it's definitely, but with that high-end provider price, you need to have that high-end provider professionalism that comes with it. So my question for you would be, do you want to have brain surgery from a general practitioner? Obviously not, right? You don't want to have brain surgery from a general practitioner. And that is the point, right? That's the point right there. Best Roofing and what they do, they are the brain surgeon for their clients, and they know they're going to have a high success rate from what they're doing rather than, a quick fix from a general practitioner. So I hope what you're seeing here is like the building blocks of how you can build your pipeline and your margin, which impacts your closing ratio. And the reason why I set it up this way is because this next best practice is a big point that is very undervalued. So imagine you're pursuing these opportunities that you are your ideal client profile, that are the clients that you want to work with, that are high margin opportunities. You're allowed to then, what we call is go for the no, right? And that comes by qualifying your opportunities, right? So here's what I mean. Let's say you go to Google and you search for roofing in South Florida. Best Roofing is going to pop up, right? They're going to get a call and they say, hey, I have a house out in Fort Lauderdale. It's about 4,000 square feet, shingle roof. Can you guys help me out with that? They're saying, no, we don't do that kind of roof. Or let's say, for example, they're qualifying that opportunity to say, hey, we don't do that kind of work. Thank you. We'll pass. Let's say now we have a commercial. Let's say they have an opportunity that comes in and they say, we have a government building. This is City Hall in Fort Lauderdale. We have a leak in our building. We want you guys to come out and take a look at it. And they say, okay, well, do you have the budget for that? Yeah, we have the budget approved. What is the bidding process for this job? Well, we have to go out there and get 5 different quotes from different providers to get the best price. And so Best Roofing is like, oh, okay, so the most important thing to you is getting the best price for the job. Is that right? And they said, yeah, this is government. We have, we pinch pennies over here, so we can't really go anything but, above the lowest offer. Best Roofing could say, this is not really the kind of client that we want. So we're going to pass on that. Right. And so we can go for the no. And you can say, we only work with clients that are private and negotiated. We'll pass on that. Right. Where other companies will say, yeah, we'll do it. But that starts, again, the reason why you're desperate for those opportunities because you don't start with that ideal client. Right. So the process is asking yourself, is this an ideal client? No, then go for the no. This is a next level business development practice. And you have to have the freedom, the opportunity, and the privilege to be able to say no. And strategy is mostly saying, what are you saying no to, right? It should be mostly everything that's not your ideal client. So that's a really powerful activity for you to do as a contractor. So next thing, track the lead source trends. And what that means is, where are your high quality opportunities coming from? Maybe everybody's calling into the business. You need to have the receptionist say, hey, how did you hear about us? Oh, we found you on Google. Oh, we found you from this trade show. We found you from all these different lead source trends. And when you're finding these trends, you're able to double down on what's working, right? So let's say all the high-rise condo associations for Best Roofing, all of those condos, they have property managers. And if you're a property manager, you have to have certifications, and you have to have specializations for managing that property that the state requires. So one of Best Roofing's best lead sources is what they call their Roofing 101 class. And this Roofing 101 class is a monthly class that Greg hosts. Now it's virtual, but it used to be in person, where he gathers, 20, 10 to 20, sometimes more property managers who need to get recertified for the year. And he does this once a month, and they're high quality opportunities that they get from this area because they're all managing a high-rise condo or a commercial roof, and they need the certification. So when you become the authority and teaching how to maintain your commercial roof, you're going to be the first one that they think about when it's time for them to do that. So once you do that, you're able to double down on that focus and stop wasting money on marketing for things that never work. Who buys a commercial roof online? Probably not many people. So it's really important to track those trends, which leads us to one trend that we see that works really well is your high quality partners. Best Roofing works with a high quality HVAC contractor, electrical contractor that they get to share leads and recommendations with. If an HVAC guy say, hey, I have a roofing guy that I really recommend. We work really great together. You're 90% of the time you're going to go with them, right? Because they have a good synergy, and it's really important to track those trends, and this would be one of those trends that you're tracking. Follow-up, got to put my follow-up sales statistics in here. One way to increase your closing ratio, that is the easiest way to increase your closing ratio instantly, is to continue to follow up. Never kill a deal until you get a no. Even if they go silent, don't kill that deal until they say no. If they don't say no, then it's still open. And there's plenty of polite ways to be to not pester. Like, for example, what we do here at Followup is we tell our prospects, hey, if you're not interested anymore, please let me know. If not, I'll just assume that you're just busy and I will continue to follow up. As soon as they receive that email, they reply back and they say, hey, we're interested or we're not interested. Huge way to increase your closing ratio. And I win deals all the time that says, you're the only one that followed up with me 6 months later. And you will win the same just by doing that. I guarantee it. The next best practice, the last best practice for us here today, is knowing your strike zone, right? So if you have built the solid foundation of the strategies that we have been talking about here today, you're going to take the swings at the pitches that are within your strike zone that you want, right? So one way to segment your strike zone is, let me ask you this, is one person selling construction and service at your company? Are they selling everything, or do you have two people specializing in construction or in service, right? One guy selling the big jobs, one guy selling the small jobs. You're going to be able to get more done faster by doing that. And there's tons of reports and analytics out there that you can do that. You can populate a report like this via Excel through some of the exports that Followup provides. If that's something you're interested in, we can talk about that. But knowing your strike zone, knowing the opportunities you're most likely to win are critical so that you can understand, hey, are we wasting our time here, or are we pursuing things that we are actually going to win? But as you are doing all of these activities and all of these steps, you're building a solid pipeline, which will increase your closing ratio dramatically. And then hopefully, what you can do is create a pipeline that looks something like this, and you have $16 million in your contracts to be signed, in the next 30 to 60 days. So once you solve that, it's really comforting to be able to know I have a lot of work in my backlog, and I know that this is coming my way, right? If you have any questions around the things that we have talked about here today, happy to dive in deeper. Reach out to me or Christine or CJ, whoever here at Followup. We're happy to show you these reports and strategies that our clients are implementing. Thank you guys for joining. If you have any suggestions on the next contractor roundtable, we would love to hear your ideas and what you would like to learn from other contractors that we work with. Thank you guys. Have a good weekend.